episode 79. I'm your host, Millie Rouge.
And I'm your other host, Marissa Kay.
And together we make up the band Vienna Whyte from Edmonton, Canada. This roundtable is a YEG Music production. Marissa, could you start off by introducing the guests that we have on the show today?
Yes, so first off, we have 3isthemagic, or 3isthemagic, Sydney Irving, Amsi, and Linde LaChance.
Awesome. So welcome to the show, everyone. We are so excited to have you on today. We want to jump into hearing about some musical journeys. So we want our audience to kind of get to know you guys a little bit more. So let's start off with 3isthemagic. Can you tell us in about, a minute or less about your musical journey and kind of how you got into music?
So I'm born and raised in Dallas, Texas. I started off listening to music from my dad. He used to tape like Michael Jackson and Prince concerts. And he would force me to watch him for like 6 hours. And so that was my like first impression for music. And then I started freestyling, started putting out mixtapes, and then eventually started taking it more serious and, started getting into like real, like studios and putting out quality music, put out an album. And now, I'm putting out some singles.
Awesome. Fantastic. So let's go to Sydney. Can you tell us about your musical journey?
Sure. All right. So I'm from Syracuse, New York, and I got my first guitar for my 9th birthday, and I started playing when I was 10 and writing songs and stuff. I'd say my favorite musicians are like Tom Petty, Ryan Adams. And so I've got a couple albums out. I actually just put out a brand new single, and I've been playing all over the New York area for the past couple of years. Big thanks to Grace Musicians Group for that.
Awesome. Really cool. And Amsi, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your musical journey?
So I started singing when I was 3 years old. And I started taking vocal lessons, and I was classically trained, but I always loved pop music. So I started writing music on my own in 2015. I released an EP in 2015, and then in 2016. And then I kind of had this weird journey where I actually worked, in the industry for a little bit and took a break from music. And then after that, I performed at the New York City Women's March in 2017. And ever since then, I've just been putting out singles, and I'm really excited because I have a bunch of new music coming out soon.
Awesome. And last but not least, can we get from Linde? Can we hear about you?
Yes. So I'm from Nashville, born and raised here. I've been here my whole life. My musical journey sort of started at a very young age as well. My family is very, very musical. My mom was a singer. My dad was a touring musician with several big name artists. And so I kind of got the love of doing that and performing from them. And started writing and actually paying attention to music a little bit more when I was 16. And I've put out 2 singles so far and being ready to release another project at the end of October.
Well, thanks so much, everybody, for sharing. It's really cool to get such a wide variety of musicians here. So I'm super excited to jump into these questions.
So for those of you that are joining us on Twitch or Reddit, today we're actually talking about music from the United States of America.
Our neighbors to the south.
Yes, our very close neighbors. So obviously things will be pretty similar for us and you guys, but we kind of want to hear from your perspective a little bit more about the States. So did you want to start off our first question?
Yeah, I'll start off the first question. So as musicians, there are 2 main sides to building your career: perfecting your craft and making sure people know who you are. So for you all, what percentage would you give each of those things when it comes to you and your music career? Which do you think is more important?
Amsi is I guess I'll start.
Go for it.
Do it.
I definitely think it would be like a 70-30 split, just in terms of like 70% should go into creating your craft. I think people are drawn to when people are drawn to good things, like they're drawn to good art. And if you're not, you know, focusing on songwriting or focusing on just even vocal practice or even just bettering yourself as a musician, I think you lose the factor of marketing yourself, because you could go all day and market yourself, but you might not be necessarily, you know, perfecting something that you actually love. You know, not every musician is built to just be this like amazing marketing genius all the time. I don't think that's, I mean, it's part of our job now, but like before it never used to be. That's why they had marketing divisions in in record labels, you know, like they had complete divisions with like hundreds of people backing you to do this type of stuff. And now, thanks to social media, I think we have to put on so many different hats. And like, of course we have more power in the hats that we're, you know, putting on. But I think it all boils down to like, how good is the song? Like, how good is the music? Are you paying attention to the mixing and mastering? Are you, you know, making your ears better? And listening, really like listening, like, is that hi-hat off? Is that key wrong? What is it? Like, what is making this song like pop? I think that's like the mastering of it.
Yeah. I do think that that's all very important, but I agree that I think it is a split where perfecting your craft
really quick.
sorry,
Lindy, sorry to interrupt
but
you.
I don't know if you could say that it's a 70-30 split so much, especially with what you said about like social media being so important now, because these days record labels, like, they're not even going to take a chance on
Lindy,
you.
sorry to interrupt you really quick. Someone, if you have the stream on in the background, just make sure you mute the stream because we're hearing it on one of your mics. So make sure if you have the Twitch stream running, just mute it really quick. Sorry to interrupt, Lindy, but keep going.
But I guess what I was saying is these days, like, most record labels aren't even going to look at you unless you have a following.
Yeah.
And unless you're playing out actively, and unless you already have sort of a built-in audience, because it's so expensive to take on a new artist and start them from the ground that they don't want to take that risk. And so while perfecting your craft is really important, if you actually want to be signed by a label and not just be an indie artist, my personal opinion is that you need to really market yourself, because record labels can get you better songs.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's also, I think maybe 70-30 was giving a little too much. I think maybe 60-40 might be a better number. But I do think like there's something to say about like Maggie Rogers, right? Like she literally quit music, went tour, like did what she needed to do, came back, and then like had a hit. And it wasn't because it wasn't just solely because of her marketing tactics. I think it was because of the music itself. But I also think there's something to say about, is it really marketing or is it actually connection too? Like, is it networking? Because some of these people have 3,000 followers and can get verified because they simply knew someone in an agency, or they simply knew someone who could get them that foot in the door. So are they really even marketing themselves if they just have a blue check mark? You know, like, or are they really marketing? Because at that time, and that point of time, you're not doing the work. Your blue check mark says more than anything. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think it's like also a part of networking as well. Like, I don't think it's fully marketing, but I also think it's like you can get your foot in the door a lot of different ways, other than just these two, I think.
I agree about the networking. You know, personally, I like really want to like perfect my craft, and you know, like I'm, you know, like really introverted, and so, you know, like I'm not as big on putting my stuff out there, or, you know, like I wasn't before. Now I am, because, you know, like I want people to, you know, like hear me and then listen to my music. But, you know, like I feel like it's a numbers game. And so, like we've heard many times people getting on like World Star and getting on these like bigger platforms, and their music is super low quality, like it's trash. And so, like it does have a lot to do with that networking, like it does have a lot to do with who and also just find a way to get people to view your stuff. And so, like I really can't give a percentage. I just feel like that you just have to just keep on just working as hard as you can on both of those so that you can get as many ears as possible.
I think like what I mean partially in terms of marketing is not just like putting yourself out there and playing shows. A huge part of marketing, especially in the social media age, is simply just branding. Like even Maggie Rogers, like you hear her name and you know what she sounds like and you know what her vibe is. And you know exactly what kind of product you're going to get from her, whether she takes a break or not. And so I think that it's important to, yes, perfect your craft, but you also have to perfect it in a way that you find your musical whole. You find you find what, while genres are fluid, you find the space that you fit into and market to that audience. Because once you have a very specific brand that's all your own, you can do a lot more with it. People will be able to say your name and know exactly where you fit.
Yeah, no, 100%. I agree.
I think I would say probably about a 50-50. Like, I just recently learned about Maggie Rogers, but like, I think a band that kind of embodies the 50-50 is like a band like Kiss. So they brand themselves so nicely, but the music is also there. Like, if you make awesome music and nobody knows your name, nobody's going to hear it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
A good song is a good song, but if you don't have the tools to get it out to more ears.
But I think what also speaks to that isn't that part of the craft is like the branding of your music. Like, is that necessarily a marketing trait, or is that actually honing in on what you're doing? Because like I think it's also like you could take it as both ways. You could say like part of the marketing is me understanding what I'm doing in the studio. Like if Ariana Grande, right? She had Sweetener, which personally I didn't like Sweetener as much as Thank You Next. And the reason why I didn't like it was because every other person and their mother was the songwriter on there. And it just didn't appeal to me. Where I listened to Thank You Next and I'm like, that's her. That's literally her in the shower. So I think there's something to say about both. It's like when you're perfecting your craft, aren't you also actively marketing? Or aren't you actively thinking about
your brand?
I mean, some musicians don't. We've seen them. Like I think everyone has seen those musicians that like literally have who are just shooting in the dark. And I think that's very different from realizing like, okay, I need to figure out my personal bubble before I put it out into the world so that I understand when I put it out into the world what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Well, we actually have a question here that I think might be interesting for you guys specifically because you do all kind of come from different areas. And we've actually discussed this on the round table before, so I'm always like to get different opinions about this, but musicians sometimes tend to flock towards bigger cities in order to try and gain more recognition or to be noticed, quote unquote. But what do you think are some advantages and disadvantages of moving to an area that's more heavily saturated with music? So, for example, like Los Angeles or even Nashville, I'm sure you're familiar with this, or even New York being so massive.
Well, Dallas too, yeah.
Yep.
Well, I met, going back to the Kiss thing, I met Gene Simmons at a Tops in New York, and I asked if he had any advice, and he said that he just goes, move. And he was like, you have to go to where the music is. You can't just wait around for someone to come and find you because nobody's going to come find you unless you're like really lucky. But you got to go to the epicenter of awesomeness.
I think for sure there's something to be said in that, because you have more opportunities to be seen. And I think that that's really important, especially if you're looking to be on a label and not just an indie artist. Um, as someone who's from Nashville and in like a mini epicenter, I will say that all of my friends who put out music, like the really convenient part of being from out of town and moving to a new city is that you have an audience built elsewhere in the country. And you have a hometown to go back to, and you have a hometown to build off of and gain a following from. Whereas like me being in Nashville, I have a following, but it's not the same as taking it from somewhere and building it elsewhere and having multiple parts of the country to pull from. And like my family's from several different parts of the country, and so I have ties in other places, but it's not quite the same. So
I feel like you have to go where the opportunity is. And so like of course like you want to build a fan base in your hometown. But like wherever the opportunity is, like you were saying, like you want to have multiple, like places that, like come to you. And like in Dallas, we had Post Malone, who really, really didn't connect with the fan base here in Dallas. And then we had somebody like Yellow Beezy, who does connect with the, fan base in Dallas, and everybody loves him here. And so, I think you have to just find your way and just kind of just go to, like where the opportunity, lies at.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. I went to this, I went to Grammy camp. I don't know if you guys have heard, the Grammys have a camp. It's not like granny camp, like with the grandmas. A lot of people used to make fun of me in high school when I said that. They were like, "You went to granny camp?" I was like, "No, I went to Grammy camp, the Grammys." I know.
Not know what they're talking about.
I know. I was like, guys, I know that you're like obsessed with classical music, but like, hello. Anyway, so at Grammy camp, they had the same discussion, and they were like, what would you rather be, a small fish in a big pond or a big fish in a small pond? And I think it's a matter of what can you cultivate. If you're like really in the middle of nowhere and like there's only forest around you and there's acres and there's no music venues, yeah, I think you should maybe possibly move somewhere that might have a little bit more opportunity for you. But I don't think you necessarily, like, living outside of New York has its benefits of living inside of New York. As you can see, we're in the middle of a pandemic. Living in New York in the middle of a pandemic as an indie musician is difficult because all the venues and opportunities that you used to have are no longer a thing. Now living in suburbia is like a dream because these people have space to have these outdoor venues and clubs and all of that stuff. So people who are musicians in New Jersey are having a baller of a time. Meanwhile, musicians in New York are suffering because we're all compacted in this little sardine can, and we can't perform in venues. None of our venues are even open. The rent is so high. So I think it goes to show, like, if you are definitely in like the middle of nowhere and there's literally no access to like proper music stuff, then yes, I do think you should move and you should definitely consider that. But there is something to say about being a tycoon in that small town of yours, and really, like, say your town has 5,000 people, you wouldn't get that audience in New York City because it takes and everyone's a critic in these big cities, Los Angeles, New York, Houston, Austin, Nashville. They all are critics. They're all very critically acclaimed. I mean, they listen to music all the time. So like, it's very hard to impress them. It's really easy to impress someone in New Jersey. Like, you just go out there, do your performance in like a carnival, of this, of that, and they're like automatically like, yes, we will get you there. Like they have an immediate fandom. So yeah. I mean, like, it depends on how you work it. I think it's definitely just how you see how half full, half empty, big fish, small pond, all that stuff.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I like that idea of like that whole thing that you were talking about, how everyone's a critic and you can find that little niche of people who like have never heard your kind of music before and are totally turned on to it. So that's incredible. And actually that leads us beautifully into our next question here, which is more about like the social media, because as you mentioned, we're in the middle of a pandemic right now. So a lot of us are leaning on social media, and actually TikTok being one of the biggest apps right now, it's inspired artists and musicians to get really creative with how they're promoting their music. Some people like to keep their professional life and their personal life a little bit more separate, but for artists that can be a little bit trickier, because I know like 3isthemagic, you were saying earlier how you want people to hear about you, and before you were a little bit more introverted and now you want people to hear you want to talk about your story. So how have the changes to social media in the last few years shaped the way that you portray yourself online, both professionally and personally?
I think like you were saying, like before, like movie stars and musicians, they were like really tucked off where they wouldn't share their personal life. But now, like since we have phones and like we can see everything, like people want to know what's going on. So people want to know, like about what you're doing. YouTube, has become huge, like as well as like TikTok. And like you see like everybody on there, like you see like famous basketball players showing like when they're practicing, or like you see like musicians showing when they're going shopping, just all like types of stuff like that. And like I feel like that really just allows people to like come into your daily life, because they don't want to just know about like your work, or like about your music or your business, but they want to know about you. And so like it helps you to be able to personalize who you are, and be able to like relate to your viewers and your listeners.
I think social media, it's so interesting because, like you said, I think, before we didn't even, I feel like we always had to have like a mask on. And now we can kind of like vlog our day, vlog how we did our makeup, and for shows, or behind the scenes of like what happened before the show. Like I tripped and fell and broke my toe and then I performed, like, like all this like clickbait, whatever. I think it creates a better connection to your audience, but it also, I think it matters if your audience cares or not. I've done videos where people were like, I don't care. Like, I really don't care what you're doing.
Because people care more about why you do something rather than what you do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They do. And I think like the vlogging of like, I did a vlog. So I have a Muslim background. So I did a vlog about Ramadan, just to like tell people about it and be like, this is what it is, like, because a lot of people had confusion. And that vlog did way better than any like singing video I did. And it was just because people were nosy. And I think it goes to show that like people want to see the human side of you. I think this is why, like, I hate to bring Keeping Up with the Kardashians in it, but like that's why the Kardashians do so well, is because their entire life, like if you look at Kim Kardashian, it's free advertising. Like look at Kim Kardashian and her showing like, and this is how I made Skims, and this is how I did this, and Kylie going to the factory and showing how her lip kits are made. I hate to bring up Jeffree Star, same thing, where he did a docuseries with Shane Dawson. He's very problematic. I'm very sorry, but it did significantly better for his palettes than him just being like, here's my palette. It's like, no, he showed the whole process, and everyone was like, oh my God, I had no idea that this is how a lip gloss is made. I have no idea how this is happening. So it's really interesting to have that connection with a musician from start to finish of like an EP, and they're doing the behind the scenes, and they're like, I did this really rough vocal and it was bad. And then I did it again. And then I cried about it. And then it was better the next day. And, like people want to see that and want to have that connection, be like, oh my God, if they can do it, I can do it too.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think exactly what you said about people being nosy. is that people, they want to feel connected to you in some way. And it's not just like a silly video that you post. They do really want to know why. I think that's like, because then they feel like they understand you a little bit more. And you can understand like where your music comes from a little bit as well.
And like with your audience being basically in your back pocket the entire time, like you have a whole audience in your pocket. Do you guys think that social media in the age of people kind of being more in your life and in your personal life, how do you feel like that's going to affect you playing shows and you performing live for people? Like, how do you feel social media is going to affect, let's say, like touring, for example? Because everyone's live streaming right now. You can live stream, like, even we talked about 3isthemagic earlier. We're like, oh, you have this really cool ring light in your background. Like, it's perfect for like playing music for your audience at home. So how do you guys think that social media is going to affect touring from now on?
Well, I would say that touring, you can't really replace it. There's really nothing that has the equal effect, like the energy and the excitement of buying a ticket and then going to the show and seeing your favorite artist in person. It's not the same when they're at home and you're really far away and they're like just at home on the couch, whatever, and then it's just not the same.
I can speak from personal experience. Sorry, I'm like talking a lot, but I actually, in the beginning of the pandemic, I did a Zoom world tour. It was my own way of like coping. It wasn't a world tour. I didn't go anywhere. I was in my house, but we pretended that each stop was like a different country. And we called it the What Did I Miss tour. And it was all like the events that we would have missed. So like the first event was prom, and I did it in Philadelphia because my boyfriend's from Philadelphia. And so I asked him to prom via TikTok. And then the next week was, I think, in New York City because it was Pride and we were missing Pride, and that got canceled. So we made everyone dress up. So I definitely agree, not the same experiences as going and seeing someone live. That is totally different. There's so many technological issues. There are so many, like, I mean, we had people breaking into our Zooms by accident, like, and it was like hackers and stuff. But at the same time, I do think there's something to say about just having a live connection with people in general. I think it does save us in some way. Zoom just put out a article today. I think they're going to try to do some virtual touring on their end and like actually be able to charge people for the things that they're watching. But yeah, I don't think it replaces the human connection. And also, like, when you're touring, you're on a stage and your audience is here. Yeah. Even if the stage is really small, you're still somewhere above the audience, you know? And that feeling of like the control that you have as an artist, I think, is missing from all of these live streams, is that beautiful, like, I am controlling this room. Like, it sounds very narcissistic and very like vain, but like as an artist, you like that's the type of things you live for. You live to just get on there and just be like, I got this, guys. Like, I got this entire room. And if they don't want to pay attention to me, I'll make them pay attention, you know? And there's something to be said about that beautiful spirit. And like that, when the audience turns and realize like what you're doing on stage, they're like, oh my God, like, I'm so sorry I didn't even pay attention to the first song, but now I'm like in it, like I'm with you. It's beautiful. And I don't think social media could ever replace that, but there's definitely ways to try to move around it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I think that's a mention, sorry. And I actually, it sounds funny, the control thing that you're saying, you're like, it sounds narcissistic, but it totally is something that's internalized that we don't even really think about. So I think that's a really interesting point you brought up. And when we talk about touring, of course, when you tour, you have to have a team. You can't just individually just get on a stage and be like, here I am. So how have you guys gone about building your team, and why is it important to have a team? And if you don't have a team, per se, what do you think are the benefits of working solo?
I think the awkward silence is really funny. It makes me laugh every time. Oh, you can go ahead if you want to say something first.
No, it's all right. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just mentioning the silence. I was just gonna say, I was just gonna say that like I think a team is definitely super important to have, because without them, we really don't have a support system that helps you to keep progressing. I like, I think there's a lot of different facets of it that make it happen. And so like I have my management group, Grace Musicians Group, and so they definitely helped me a ton to play out and push my music to different outlets. And like the ISSAs, the International Singer-Songwriters Association, which I'm a part of, they're super cool. They help and promote music, and I'm sponsored by Breed Love Guitars, and it's just like all these different things, my friends, my family, the Mojo, that's the band that I play with, and I'm probably missing a lot of people, but it's just a lot of different places that it comes from, I guess.
Yeah, I think as someone who doesn't have a team necessarily to help me with touring, I am a singer-songwriter, but I also write for a lot of other people and do a lot of other kinds of projects. And I will say that like in some ways, like it's nice to be able to do your own thing because like it's easy to book shows in Nashville. Like you don't really need someone to help you do that. But the other side of the coin is that like one of the first things that we learned basically, I went to Belmont University. I have a degree in music business and marketing, and basically like one of the first things you learn is like you need someone as an artist to push you because there's only so far that you can market yourself, and mommy and daddy can't do that. Like, you know, that's why it's better to not have a family member be your manager, because it's always mommy or daddy saying, oh, you know, but my daughter or my son is so good, they sound so great, versus like someone else in the field saying, I see their talent, let me show you their talent, let
It's hard
me
to get that unbiased opinion.
Yeah.
these are the reasons why you should have them, etc. So it is really important to have a team that believes in you and what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like that, and I 100% I think that's super important. I mean, that's why we have a manager too, and like, you know, he's the one to tell us like, okay, not to be mean, but this song sucks, and just like in the most like constructive way possible. And it can be hard when it's a family member because they don't want to say anything mean about you. They want to support you, but it definitely helps to have that unbiased opinion for sure. And so with having a team and making sure that you're being successful, everyone has a different definition of what success means to them as a musician. So what is your definition of success, and at what point in your career will you say that you've quote unquote made it?
To be honest, I don't think anything. Because I'm just that type of person. For me, it's like, I think a lot of musicians are like this. Like we're kind of a little bit kind of neurotic in a way. Like every time we set a goal and we make the goal, there's always a new one to be had. And I think part of like being a musician is always being hungry, even when you're not really hungry specifically, you know, like if it's not literal, like you're always hungering for something more and trying to achieve more, whether it's in music, whether if it's in charity, whether if it's in, I know a lot of musicians, once they hit a certain level, they turn into like activists. Like you can see like Halsey, just like moving audiences. Like she was at the 2018 Women's March. She was at the March for Our Lives. She's, you know, present. She was there for the Bernie campaign. Like she is consistently present on social media about her activism. And I think that a lot of musicians then take on a new role once they reach a certain level. So I don't think I'll ever reach wherever I want to reach. And if I feel that way, I think I should stop, if that makes any like I don't think I'll ever be completely satisfied.
I think that's very true. I think for me personally, like there are tiers to success.
Mm-hmm.
And I think definitely at least one of those tiers for me would be like being financially stable with music and being able to only do that and not worry about being able to pay my band, and being able to not just take care of myself financially with music and have enough of a connection with an audience that like can support me financially in that respect, but also taking care of my team.
Yeah.
And I think I always love that question because it's so cool to hear different perspectives of everyone because everyone always has their own definition of success.
Yeah, like some people say like when I hit Celine Dion levels, that's when I'm going to be successful. And it's so funny because it's different for everybody else. Yeah. And I mean, like for us, it's more of just like finding that small community of people who will keep coming back to buy your music and keep coming back to support you. And it's the people who you keep engaging with and the people who will talk to you are the ones that you want in your network, because you can have 1 million followers and like 10 likes on a post and that means nothing, you know,
or the blue check mark like we were saying earlier, and it really doesn't mean anything at the end of the day sometimes. But to finish off this roundtable, Marissa and I like to actually help our younger and older audience with informative advice on becoming a musician. As we can only really speak from the Canadian perspective, we were wondering, what advice would you offer to any aspiring artists that are from the States? What would you kind of give to them as your advice?
I would say probably set your sights on what you want to do and try not to have a plan B, because if there's a plan B, it's going to be a distraction. You have to just really go for it and go full speed ahead.
Yeah, I would say, like the big thing is to just keep on pushing, and to keep driving, because it's really easy for, like an up and coming artist to lose hope, like in the, put out some stuff and to not, like see anything from it, or to, like gain any fans from it. And then, just want to stop and give up. And so, like I would say to just keep on perfecting your craft. And just keep on, putting your music out there and keep going, because it just takes, like one hit, for everything to, just all come together.
like that snowball effect. I like that.
I think one of the biggest things that any musician should realize is comparison is the thief of joy. It's really, really easy to find yourself scrolling through another artist on your levels page and get lost in their successes. And I think, as musicians, we're very emotional, and, we'll see someone on social media be like, I got 300,000 streams. And you're like, oh, I only got 1K. And it's fine. I think you just have to try to block out the noise and filter, listen to the world with filtered ears, in terms of take the nuggets that you believe will make you better. The other like crap that you hear, like, oh, you're 20 years old and basically like everyone already made it by now, so you shouldn't be here. Don't let anyone deter you from following your dreams and poo-poo you into a corner. I think that is what, can bog us down a lot of the time, is just there's so much noise consistently. And so don't compare yourself to other people. Create your own world that you enjoy living in with the people that you love, meaning your team, your friends, your family. Create music that you find satisfying for yourself, and do your best to back it and don't look back.
I like that. Having conviction in the thing that you're putting out. That's really great advice. So thank you everybody for your words of wisdom. We really appreciate it. And thank you guys so much for joining us for this roundtable. So that was actually our last question as we are out of time. Go for it.
If you guys are at home watching this roundtable with us on Twitch or Reddit, make sure you follow us to be notified about our upcoming shows that we do throughout the week and our live streams. If podcasts are more your style, be sure to search up the Vienna Whyte podcast. I'm Millie Bruges, one of your hosts today.
And I'm Marissa Kay, your other host for today. You can find our band on the internet at www.viennawhyte.com. Vienna, like the city, White spelled with a Y, because we're trendy. You can also find us on Instagram at Vienna Whyte, and there you can find all of our socials.
So we're going to get all of our guests to, again, say their name and their social media of where they want you to kind of find them. So let's start with Sydney. Can you sign yourself out?
Sure. I want to say thank you so much for having me on today. Super fun. If I wasn't on here, I'd be doing homework, so this is way better. So you can check me out on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter, and my website, sydneyirvingmusic.com, where you can pick up my brand new single, on CD single, limited edition. And the music video is coming out this week, so stay tuned for that.
Awesome. That was a slick transition. I love that. And let's 3isthemagic. Can you tell us where we can find you?
Yep. Thank you guys so much for the opportunity. You'll be able to find me on my website. It's 3isthemagic.com. Also, Instagram, 3isthemagic Live, Facebook, 3isthemagic Live. I've got a new single called Big Mood that's going to be coming out over the weekend. So it's going to be on all of the platforms, Apple Music, Spotify, Tidal, all of those.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Let's get Amsi next.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate it. This was an amazing roundtable talk. I love it. You guys can find me on my website, www.amcmusic.com, and you can find me on all my social media, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at ThisIsAmsi, AMSI. I do have a single out called Sweet Sugar Spice. You guys can follow me on Spotify, and be sure to check it out. And I also have a filter on Instagram called Sweet Sugar Spice, so if y'all want to use it, it really does do your face justice. Makes you look fly.
Okay, we're definitely going to use that in our next post for sure.
Yes,
so
please, it's so fun.
Thank you so much for sharing. And last but not least, let's get Linde. Can you sign yourself out?
Yes, thank you guys so much for having me on. It's so much fun to talk to other artists. And you can find me on all social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, etc. at Linde LaChance. Linde is Linde. And I'm getting ready to put out a whole new EP at the end of October. Date a little bit TBD because COVID, but hopefully it's coming out at the end of October, and I'm really excited to put out a new project.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys all so much for coming on the roundtable. We're really happy and grateful to have had you on the show. We hope you have a wonderful weekend, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.
Bye. And we're rating. All right.